All of us are familiar with running, but today let me tell you about something that you're not so familiar with, and that is barefoot running. Yes, believe it or not, there is a subset of the running community that truly believes that running without shoes is better than running with shoes. Now I'm going to tell you all about it, why, and how it works. So we're going to start in the 1970s. Around that time, Nike started inventing the running shoe as we know it today. It had humble beginnings, basic covering of your foot with a waffle maker pattern imprinted into the bottom of the shoe. Over the next decades though, along with the running community, the running shoe evolved. The idea was that when you're running more and more, you're subjecting your feet to more impact, and therefore you need cushion to protect your feet. Let me tell you about how the movement started that didn't believe this. It all started with Dr. Daniel Lieberman in the 2000s. His nickname is the Barefoot Professor. He's an expert on human evolution, including how humans became bipedal, moving on two legs. In the 2000s, he did good research on barefoot running and how it can be better than wearing cushioned shoes. I'll share with you a quote from his research. He says, "Our research shows that people who are habitually barefoot or wear minimal shoes tend to walk and run differently than people with shoes, often in a way that leads to very low collision forces, even on very hard surfaces." I know what you're thinking. How did this nerdy guy from Harvard change part of the running community? It wasn't him. In fact, it was somebody named Christopher McDougall. In 2009, he published a book called Born to Run, and yes, I have read the book, and that's how I learned about barefoot running. So in his book, Born to Run, Christopher McDougall uses the inspiring example of a tribe from Mexico called the Tarahumara people. Now these people are famous for running hours and hours and days on end, long distances, barefoot or in very minimal shoes. And along with using their example, Christopher McDougall talks about Daniel Lieberman's research about barefoot running and says, look at these people, look at this research, all of these great examples of why barefoot running is better than cushioned shoes. Why do we even wear shoes anyway? And besides, it wasn't until modern history that humans even had shoes, so clearly we were designed to run without shoes at all. To help explain this better, I'll share with you the theory that's behind barefoot running. So it all starts with the force and impact of running on your feet. When you run, there is a natural process for most of us called pronating. That means that your feet twist and turn as you run. If your feet turn inward, it's called overpronating, and if your feet turn outward, it's called underpronating. This is a natural force and mechanism for running that is designed to help absorb the force of running. In contrast, cushioned shoes lock up your feet and restrict their natural movement. And instead of protecting your feet from the force of running, the idea is that when you stop the natural movement of your feet, it hurts your feet and makes you more prone to injury. When you run barefoot, you allow your feet to move naturally, to twist and turn, and to absorb the impact of running. An additional benefit of it is that when you run without the cushion protecting your feet adapt to it. Your feet, ankles, and lower leg muscles strengthen with barefoot running to be better adapted to absorb the impact of running. Of course, I know what you guys are thinking. Matt, you've explained the science and the ideas behind barefoot running. I'm 100% there with you. I'm ready to run off into the wilderness in my bare feet and ditch my shoes. And I was with you there 10 years ago. But why have I gotten a little away from barefoot running, and what are the downsides of it? The way that I would describe it is that barefoot running is like the running community's version of going gluten-free when you're not allergic to gluten. Yes, it can have positive benefits for you. However, it's not a magic wand that'll fix all your problems. Another reason I have is convenience. It's not very socially acceptable to be barefoot. Also, most of us have spent just about all of our lives being in shoes. It takes a very sharp learning curve in order to ditch your shoes. Another reason is protection. If it's cold outside, it's not very conducive to barefoot running. Another thing, none of us want to worry about stepping on things and hurting our feet when we're barefoot, and that's why we wear shoes. additional reason I have is shoe companies. I believe that being barefoot is not very widespread because it's not promoted very much by, for example, shoe companies. Of course, shoe companies want to sell you shoes, so they tell everybody they need shoes. So that leads to, what is the solution I have to offer about this issue? I say that if you're interested in barefoot running, do it in moderation. If you are a runner, use it as a small supplement to the regular running that you do. Perhaps run around in a grass field a little bit. It does have some good positive benefits, such as learning better what is your natural way to run, as well as strengthening those feet, ankles, lower leg muscles to better absorb the impact of running. And I'll tell you about the compromise I've come up with. I simply use shoes that don't have too much cushioning. For example, 2 years ago when I ran a half marathon, I did it in shoes that had holes in them. And last year, when I trained for an entire marathon and ran it, I simply went to Nike, bought some $35 shoes that had limited cushioning in them, and that did the trick for me. And that's all about barefoot running.